Okay, we're live. Hello, I'm Marlon Weems. I am the publisher of the Journeyman newsletter, and I am really excited this morning. I am joined by someone that I have followed for some time. Um, if you watch MSNBC or cable news, I'm sure you have seen this lady. If you know about the Woke AF podcast, you certainly know who Danielle Moody is. Danielle, welcome, and thank you so much for agreeing to get pulled into the vortex of the journeyman. um, I, you told me this is your first, I guess,
It
your
is
first time
my
doing a
first.
live stream on Substack.
It is my first Substack Live. I cannot thank you enough, Marlon, for reaching out to
Thank you.
me and inviting me to join you. I'm super excited.
Well, I came up a lot of times. I don't really title these things. I'll just say who the person is, but this one, I think the title, especially after last night, is it's what in the world are Democrats doing? And
Mm-hmm.
I did not watch the State of the Union address just for my personal health. um, but I've seen some of the different takes that people had. Rachel Maddow just really, from what I can tell, did just if and I'm sure it's on YouTube or you can find it where she just kind of fact checked, and it took her like 5 minutes to go through all the lies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was kind of what I expected.
Yep.
What I really was more disappointed in, and I you can speak to this, is I feel like Democrats should have just said pass and just not, because to me I'm sure, I mean, there are other people out here who have the same opinion. I saw um I guess it was a podcast. Actually, I don't want to drop the news here, but it was with somebody who's going to be on with me next week,
Okay.
and he was talking to Ellie Mustal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Ellie was saying he gave like a laundry list of reasons why it was a trap for Democrats to even show up, because they basically are legitimizing Trump
Yep.
when they do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Republicans are real smart. Um, if they've got, they're talking about the military. Well, how can you sit there and not clap when they say something positive about the military? Um, so, there's that. So most of them showed up. But then there's that part where Al Green, it must be something about folks down in Texas. I'm from Arkansas, so I think I'm kind of like this. Al Green just wasn't having it, and there's that photo I saw where he's got his cane.
Uh,
That's just classic, And so he was escorted out, and I was thinking to myself, now we've had folks call Obama a liar.
yep.
We've had Marjorie Taylor Greene saying all
Yep.
kind of crazy stuff. Nobody's ever gotten the sergeant at arms, and so you're going to put the sergeant at arms on this old black man
Yep.
on TV. See, now where I come from, everybody gets up and leaves with him. You don't sit there and let them do this to your guy and sit there. I mean, because the way what I've seen, it's like they just sort of sat there and was like, "Well, bye, Al." you
Yeah.
know,
So
I
glad
think
that you
there
could
should have
join
been a
us.
mass exodus. Now,
Yeah.
you tell me what you think.
So so many things. First of all, I had said that Democrats, I agree with you, Marlon, should have never shown up, right? This was an opportunity, if nothing else, right? All we've been hearing from leader Jeffries and Chuck Schumer is, what do you want us to do? We have no leverage. It's their government. Hakeem Jeffries literally said that a couple of weeks ago. And what he said to Democrats is, don't make yourselves the story, don't protest, don't have the paddles, don't have the t-shirts, have the energy focused squarely on Donald Trump. He wanted Democrats to sit there mute. So even the fact that there were a handful that tried to showcase some type of resistance and protest, Hakeem Jeffries wanted them to do absolutely nothing because for some reason he believes that decorum is the proper tool to use against fascism. So when we see Representative Al Green, like people say, well, Danielle, what do you want them to do? They're not in power. This is, you have power in narrative. That's why we're on Substack. You have
Hmm.
power in the story that you tell. And Donald Trump has been telling one story about America for the last 10 years, right? The story of scarcity, the story of white grievance. Right? That's the story that Donald Trump has been telling, and without any type of counter narrative from Democrats. So when you have all eyes on you, particularly Marlon, following what happened on Friday, that obscenity inside of the Oval Office, where Donald Trump and JD Vance and little
Hmm.
Marco Rubio show the world exactly what kind of small men they are by trying to bully President Zelensky, you know that all eyes were going to be on this moment. Democrats should have, first of all, they decided that their power color that they were going to wear in coordination was going to be pink. Now, unless we're attending the Barbie movie, I don't know what kind of message that that is trying to send.
What?
Okay? So that's number 1. Number
It
2,
should have been black.
correct. That's what I said. I said that on the Danielle Moody show on YouTube. I said, look, if you're going to wear a color, right, dress in the funeral that is American democracy that we are all presiding over and have been for the last 44 days, right?
Hmm.
That's number 1. Number 2, I wanted to see them all walk in dressed head to toe in black. You know, you women, men, veils. Like go like you are going to a state funeral, right? Entirely in black. Masks over your faces to showcase the silencing and the erasure that we are witnessing of black people, people of color, people with disabilities, queer people, all of it in America to showcase the silencing. And then if if Representative Al Green was going to be that person, right? That older man with his cane, black man who has seen how much injustice in America, right? Living inside of Texas. When I worked on Capitol Hill, oh, Mr. Al Green used to sit with young black staffers, right? And talk to us, right? About like what it means to be in this space and to take up space.
Hmm.
So if he is going to raise his cane and call out the president of the United States to his face, then everyone in that moment stand up, turn their backs, and file
And
out
file
one
up
by
out of there.
one, and
Exactly.
then present to the people the real joint session for the people of this country for democracy and stream it everywhere. That is a media tactic. That is what resistance looks like. And I saw many folks say, well, members of Congress say, well, you know, we're protest, one protest doesn't matter. Tell that, right, to civil rights leaders. Tell that to Black Lives Matter. Tell that to people who have been bleeding and dying for this country for all over the world. Protest matters,
It
right? And
absolutely does.
what Democrats showed the American people last night and the world is that we are on our own. That this is this
That's it.
this this revolution that we are building, this is coming from the grassroots because the grass tops don't know where it's at.
Well, I just don't. It's if Trump and the Republicans are in a different world, Washington Democrats are in another different, and you know it's not as bad. I'm not trying to say the both sides thing, but they are. I told somebody the other day, and maybe I wrote this. It's like they are playing baseball, and Republicans are playing mixed martial arts. You know, they're over here just not even in the same arena as Republicans, and as much as I despise what they're doing. You got to respect the game. These guys stay on message.
Yeah.
They don't get Trump says jump and they're like how high, how
Mm-hmm.
many times we need to do it. And they're very disciplined and that is why people believe what they're saying. That is why people think tariffs make prices go down, right? And so I heard Chris Murphy the other
Mm-hmm.
day.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of all the Democrats, we're being, obviously AOC, obviously Jasmine Crockett,
Yes.
and there are some others.
Yep.
But Chris Murphy is kind of one of those folks that people say, oh, he's a real firebrand, blah, blah, blah. I heard him on, I believe it was CNN, like their Sunday show. So Dana Bash, I think, was interviewing him. And it was right after, of course, what had happened on Friday with Zelensky. And she asked him, do you think you made a mistake? You voted for Marco Rubio for Secretary of State.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you think you made a mistake? He said, yeah, I do. I made a mistake. And he went on to say that the reason he voted for Marco Rubio was because he thought that Marco Rubio would stand up to Trump. And I heard that, and I'm like, this is what I mean by like a different world. They Biden, to a large degree, was guilty of this too. Um, and he did what he could. He did a lot of good things, but
Mm-hmm.
let's just be real. Biden still thought he was in like the era of the Senate 25 years ago,
Yep.
when cats went out to dinner together and their
Yep.
wives did stuff, and all that. That's not where we're at right now. So yeah, I'm listening to Chris Murphy say this, and I'm like, what evidence do you have that Marco Rubio would ever stand? I mean, we've been looking at Marco Rubio for the last 10 years,
Correct.
right?
We watch Donald
We
Trump
right
disrespect Marco
denigrate
Rubio's
this guy.
wife, denigrate
I
him,
know,
and
and they're
denigrate his family and his wife, and
exactly.
Marco Rubio did nothing, said nothing.
So why? And you saw him. I mean, this guy was sitting there like his soul had left his body. I mean, he was just, because he knows it's wrong. He knew that stuff was wrong. And so when I hear somebody like Chris Murphy, who's supposed to be one of the, like the upper echelon of the folks that are out there, taking it to the Republicans, and he's saying something like that, I'm like, oh Lord, okay, who have we got?
We have nobody. And this is what I say, because at some point, and I wrote this when on Substack in my piece where I said America is dead. Now what? Right? Like, you have to go through the stages of grief, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it is fair. It is fair for us that when a loved one dies, right, that we have to, you go through these stages of bargaining, of rage, of anger, until you move yourself to a place of acceptance. And the thing about acceptance is that then it creates an opportunity for you to have a pathway forward. How am I going to move forward now? How am I going to live? And so, what I want people to understand is that we have to get to the place where we recognize and understand and grieve that the America that we knew, that we were born into, that we have grown up in, that we have understood is no longer, right? And grieve that loss. It is a real, genuine loss to understand that if you have children or grandchildren, that they are not going to experience the fruits of democracy in the way that you have for however long that you have been alive. And so grieve that loss, but then accept it so that we can get to a place where we say to ourselves, so what's next?
Mm-hmm.
Because life does not end, right? Like your life, if a loved one dies, you continue living, right? How are you honoring them? So what are we building now that everything around us is being destroyed? And what I continue to see is that Marco Rubio, for instance, received unanimous support from Democrats. Tell me the last time when a Democrat was president of the United States, AKA Joe Biden, you had one member of the Senate, Tommy Tuberville, that held up a number, hundreds of appointments. One goddamn man held up hundreds of appointments. So you're telling me that Democrats thought to themselves, after every bit of evidence that they have seen about Donald Trump, about MAGA Republicans over the last 10 years, that they thought that somehow there was still some morality, still some decency, still some cooperation left, when these people have literally called you outside of your name? right, have said that you are the enemy of the state, but these are the people that you had faith in, right? I like it, it makes no sense. And so I say to people, grieve the loss also of the Democratic Party, because this party, this in this current iteration, is not built for this moment. When you had young voices of color like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, like Jasmine Crockett, right? Like Representative Garcia, like so many bold, Ayanna Presley, right? You have these bold voices, and what did they do? What did the establishment Democrats do when these firebrands came into office? They
Try to
did,
sideline every one of them.
they sidelined every one of them and told them, wait your turn. Meanwhile, we have a press secretary of the White House right now, of the Trump administration, that is damn near a toddler, right? Because
I mean, what is she,
because
30? And she's
no,
not been in
no,
charge of
Marlon, I
anything.
don't even think that she's 30. Do you know what I'm
Wow.
saying? So what does that show you about the investment and the opportunity that this, like, MAGA Republicans provide to the trenches? It 27, somebody just said in the chat. She
Whoa.
is 27 years old, right?
Whoa.
And so you now have, right? Uh, the MAGA Republicans are building out their trenches, right? They are
Mm-hmm.
building their pipeline so that they know that they can just keep iterating on the same ideology over and over again, because they're getting these people when they're young and they're putting them in front of cameras. They're giving them positions. The Democratic Party right now, their ranking members are octogenarians,
Yep.
right? And they're telling these people that your voices don't matter. So, what I would love to see are the progressives, the deep progressives, those that do not make qualifications, right, and caveats for justice, right? Those that believe in justice for all people at all times, including the ones that do not wish you well, that those people decide this is not our party anymore and break off and begin to build something that is new.
I hear the argument that a third party just can't be successful. So what do you say to that? I mean, is I mean, it takes money for sure.
Hmm.
I am not a political scientist, um, but it's hard to argue with, because they all those names you mentioned are just beating their heads against the wall. You know,
So,
I mean, AOC, for example, and I love AOC. I honestly, um, even even going into the election, I would tell my wife they're not using her enough. They don't have her out there enough. Where is she? You know, I don't, and it may have happened. I just don't recall. Well, let me say it like this: Kamala appeared with Liz Cheney a whole lot more, if she ever did, with AOC.
that part.
Okay, see, and so and I get the calculus about the Liz Cheney thing and trying to get those votes. You're supposed to get everybody's votes you can get, but which are the more gettable votes? Progressives or Republicans who you don't agree with on anything,
You
right?
know, it was the desire for former Vice President Kamala Harris to show a sense of unity,
I
right?
understood it.
And I understood it too. But here is the thing: then where was your arm in arm with the progressive part of the party during the DNC? They provided more speaking time to Republicans than they did those that opposed the war in Gaza. The uncommitted voters
Let me tell you,
didn't get not one
not,
opportunity to
I
speak.
I I remember that, and I was sitting on my couch, and I'm like, when I saw, the Jewish couple that they gave some speaking time to, and I kept waiting, and I'm like, where's they gotta? There has to be someone who is from the Palestinian point of view that is not going to come out there and throw bombs and scare people, but still, you got to give them their say, right? And I thought that was an enormous mistake. And, part of it, I guess, these people, I don't know who the consultants are they're listening to, but they don't look like us. I
No,
just don't think, I don't know who these people are that is telling them just across the board, strategy wise. Like what you said about Hakeem Jeffries, I had really high hopes for him.
so did I.
I, I, because before he was speaker, it's not the same guy that I'm seeing now. And it's almost like he's just Pelosi,
Because when you
but
try and appease everybody,
you
you
don't,
end up satisfying no one,
yeah.
right? And so if you do not go into these roles really
DC said
stick,
they're not like us.
they not like us. It's true though. It's true because when you go into these roles believing that this is my message to moderate Democrats, there is no center. When the right has moved us
Amen.
off of a cliff and you continue to chase the right, you play their game to continue to move. So we are watching these quote unquote moderate Democrats that are more like moderate Republicans, right?
Yep.
They're the compassion. Remember when George Bush said, I'm a compassionate conservative,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that's who these people are. And so you have to hold the line, which means that, again, I don't carve out caveats for those who I believe in justice and equity for, right? You cannot tell me that you in this country are saying that everyone should have rights and access and then think that it's okay to send billions of dollars to bomb babies. Right? Like it is offensive to gaslight us into believing that that is true, right?
The other thing too, is okay. For the last 2 years, going into the election, we have been hearing Trump is a danger to democracy, fascism, authoritarianism, all these things. Okay, and it's all true. And on top of that, he's a convicted criminal, adjudicated sexual assault or whatever you want to call it. Where I come from, it's rape, but okay, whatever. How do you sit down with this guy and act like he's just everything's cool? That's the part. If you're saying all of those things and you're telling people writ large how dangerous he and the party that he represents is, or whatever. And then for the last month, we've seen what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you then go and sit down and sit down and want to have dinner with these guys? I mean, how do you do that? Because then, to me, if you do what Democrats did last night, you're you're telling me one of two things: either you didn't really mean it, or you're just not very serious about doing something about it.
Two things can be true at the same time. Two
Okay.
things can be true at the same time. You can both be unserious and you also didn't mean it. Right? We had millions of people that stayed home on November 5th
Hmm.
because either they didn't recognize the threat, right? Believe that Donald Trump wasn't actually going to do the things that he had said full on that he was going to do. And they also didn't believe Democrats and their messaging, right? And so when we look at this now, and we saw these people just sit casually on the dais on Inauguration Day, after you told me that this man might as well have been the Antichrist, but you believe more in institution than you believe in honesty. You believe more in tradition than you do in the trauma that was waiting for the American people on the other side. That tells me, right, that you are not to be trusted. You are not to be trusted because last night, two justices of the Supreme Court did not show up.
Mm.
Justice Sonia Sotomayor and KGB.
See there?
didn't show up, right? Much in the same way that Michelle Obama at inauguration didn't show up, because I am not going to lend my body to the illegitimacy of this man's presidency. And when I say illegitimate, I believe because he does not believe in the tenets of American democracy. And we are seeing that every single day. So for them, again, to sit there because they want to tell the American people, oh, don't worry, the institution is still working. You all need to be institutionalized if you think that we are not in danger.
Yeah, it's really and it's kind of heartbreaking too, because so many people have given so much. I just, I wonder, you think about people like John Lewis in a way, and some others. I don't. I mean, you're almost glad that they're not around to see this, because
Mm,
it's really disappointing. And I have to be honest, I'm surprised. I really, I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect this. And look, of course, Democrats are in the minority. There's certain things they cannot do, but they don't have to grease the skids for this guy. They
come
can
on.
hold up stuff. You know what? It's the equivalent of a sit-in. It's the
Yes.
equivalent of nonviolent protests. There are
Yep.
so many different things they could do to at least show us we're not down for this. And when I started seeing these, these confirmations going through, and I'm like, what in the world are y'all? What are you thinking? And Marco Rubio, I wasn't totally surprised that guys went with him, because he comes out of the Senate, and he's like, from my world of trading, he's like the least dirty shirt. you know, he's like, okay, if we got to vote for somebody, Marco, well, we could do worse. But to say you expected anything from him is just delusional, right? But then when you see some of these other folks that went through, um, I just don't get it. And not only that, they're not doing a good job of explaining it to us either.
No, no.
If
Eh,
there's some, like, um, three-dimensional strategy here that I'm not able to understand, explain it to me. Tell me what you're doing.
there is no three-dimensional strategy. That's the unfortunate thing. I wish that this was a Shonda Rhimes, television show, and that Papa Pope and Olivia Pope were somewhere in the back corners, like pulling the strings and getting us moving us forward in some way. But that is not the case. Democrats laid down for Donald Trump. And for when people
Whew.
say, well, what do you want them to do? It's not they're not in the majority. Why is it that when Democrats are in the minority, they seem to have no understanding of how government works? But when
Well, what's crazy is, are
Republicans are
they
in the minority, they stick every stick
exactly,
in the every stick goes inside of the
exactly
spokes,
that? I
right?
mean, it's almost like, do y'all not watch? Just watch Republicans. If you don't know what to do, just watch them, because those guys, man, like I said earlier, it's hard in a sort of a perverse way not to admire what I'm not saying it's good.
No,
I'm just saying,
I know
damn,
what you're
those
saying.
boys are reading, they have read the playbook, and they know every, razzle dazzle play they can pull out, and they're not scared to do it either.
But the thing, Marlon, too, is this is not new. The white delusional white supremacist playbook is the same playbook they were playing. They just have different platforms and different technology, right? But it's the same messaging. It's the same ideas. And so for me, it's like when people just are Democrats looking sitting around looking like deers in headlights as if they didn't anticipate what was happening. Well, guess what? They wrote you a 900 goddamn page plan. They actually bound it. They made a book for you. All you had to do was go to the library and check it out. And then if you have no imagination in thinking about what are they going to come up with, they literally wrote it down
And they're
and
doing
told you
exactly what they said. That's the thing. They're doing what they said they're gonna do. I mean,
agency
I
by
will say
agency.
the Elon Musk aspect of it is new. That's crazy. But I don't even see. Oh, okay. And this really is what to me just made it so plain. A couple of weeks ago, a group of Democrats went. Um, I don't remember which building it was. I think this was right when
The
they.
Treasury.
Thank you. It was Treasury. They
The
all go
Treasury.
to the door
Hmm.
and they let this one guy tell them they can't come in.
Correct.
I'm like, who is, first of all, who is he? And the
Right.
only person that really kind of stood up was Maxine Waters. She was like, who are you? And I mean, but she's like, what, 80 what? So she, you
Four.
can't expect her to lead the charge. I'm looking at these men going, you guys, y'all move this, make them arrest you.
This is what
Make
I'm
them arrest
saying.
you. I mean, this
And somebody just said the door was locked. I don't care.
make them
Right?
arrest
I
you.
am I am a member of Congress showing up and demanding to be let in, but you're telling me Elon Musk without a title, right? Without any without any election,
No credentials at
no
all.
credentials whatsoever other than showing up. I'm a billionaire and I'm Elon Musk. Let me in. And that works. But you all standing around with some, mess talking about, oh, the door was locked and, oh, we will prevail. How? You can't even manage to turn the knob, right? Like, give me a break. So for me, it's both a failure of imagination, but also a failure of conviction.
Hmm.
And the thing that I know to be true is that, God rest his soul, if John Lewis were still alive, it wouldn't be going down like this,
No way.
right? It would not be going down like this. John Lewis would have organized and said, you know what? We're not leaving the House floor. We are going to sit in. Let them cut off the lights. Let them cut off the water. Because what they are doing to cut the American people off from democracy, to cut the elderly off from Social Security, to cut the sick and ailing off of Medicaid, right? This is a coup. And so we're going to sit here, and you know what? We're going to call all of our constituents in. For those that are able, that can drive, that can walk, right? That can fly in. We need your help. That's what John Lewis would have been doing. And so, it's to sit there and to watch them just again think that somehow the lawlessness that we are seeing, the coup that we are under, and folks, I need to say this, that a coup does not require tanks and guns. That's coming next, because I continue to say that spring is coming,
Hmm.
summer is coming, which
Yep.
means that the protests
They're
that we
gonna
are
start.
seeing, they are going to get bigger.
Well, and not for nothing, they're messing with Social Security now. And um, you know, I saw, I think it was Martin O'Malley. I think that's the person, was saying that there's a good chance for the first time in its history
Hmm.
that Social Security might miss a payment. Payment might be late. Now, that's not going to be just owning the libs, you know? So you're liable to see disaffected. Well, you're already seeing, I say, we're in the find out stage, or, MAGA is in the
Yep.
find out stage, because
Yep.
it's sort of like, or the leopards eating people's faces,
Yep.
whatever you want to call it, where I'm seeing all these, hey, wait a minute, I'm not DEI. Why am I getting fired?
Mm.
You see? And so Social Security checks, something else. I mean, we're hearing a lot about, Medicaid, how they're, what people don't realize is for example, in a state like North Carolina, which is where I am, we're not just talking about elderly people or even, um, very poor. And I'm not an expert on Medicaid, but we're not just talking about just poor people that don't make enough money, and that's who Medicaid we think of. That's who it goes to. We're also talking about, for example, um, as a freelancer. Now I'm old enough to be on Medicare now.
Mm-hmm.
Just no choice. You just automatically go. But I have two children in college. And
Mm-hmm.
because North Carolina didn't accept Obamacare and the way it's structured, my wife is on the Affordable Care Act.
Mm-hmm.
Our children, though, are on Medicaid. That's the
Mm.
way North Carolina does it. So
Mm-hmm.
I got two kids in college, and that's how they get their insurance. So if Medicaid goes away, my kids don't have insurance, and it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's just sort of the structure of how it works in North Carolina. And I would imagine any other state that didn't, because I think it's CHIPS, and I don't recall what, it's like Children's Health, and I forget what the acronym means, but the CHIPS Act, that's not to be confused with the semiconductor thing.
Right, right, right.
But that's how kids get insurance in places that didn't accept the Medicare expansion. So you're just going to see a massive upheaval if they get their way. And they're trying their best to hide what they're doing, but they're not that good at it. And like you said, anybody that can read should know.
The thing that is going to be frightening, because again, I'm about honesty, which is that they want the mass protests to erupt into violence. They
Yep.
are manufacturing the chaos and the desperation so that they can introduce the militarized state.
Hmm.
That is the ultimate goal.
That's why I say, Black folks,
Stay home.
this is a white people problem. I mean, I no, I am not getting out there. I am not gonna. You know what? Because we've done it. We've
Over
always
and
been the
over again.
ones to try to tell folks we're the ones, the canary in the coal mine. Especially Black women that are always out here out front, and we're the ones getting arrested, getting beat up, getting hosed. And you see what happens when white folks do it. They get let out of prison.
Correct. And so I want people to understand this, that Black people make up only 13% of the population,
Hmm.
which we have only made up because of incarceration, because of systemic racism, right? Because of this, because of just overall suppression. White people listening, this is your turn to put your bodies on the line, right? Because it is not our bodies, right, that are going to be used as a shield anymore for the trouble that a majority of white Americans have caused, not only for themselves, but for the rest of us. And so I say that this time around, right? My Black folks, we can boycott. We can boycott Tesla. You can boycott Amazon, Target, blah, blah. But when it comes to our bodies this time around, you all are on your own. I do not want Black and brown people, right, to be out there, to be rolled over by the armed Cybertruck tanks. No. It is time for white people to organize themselves, to link arms with themselves, because y'all are the majority.
And that's the only way. That's to me, the only thing that's going to get their attention.
100%.
That's the only thing. Because, and look, my mother and father got their ass kicked in Arkansas marching. So I know what civil rights is, and I'm not saying they were no big civil rights leaders. They were just out there with everybody else. Um, but I've been around long enough to have seen multiple iterations of this. And the last time was in Trump's first term. And then when you see people literally responsible, if not for killing law enforcement officers, certainly, disabling people and putting folks in the hospital, and the first thing this guy does is lets them out.
Yep.
You know what? If white folks can't get outraged and stand up this time, I don't. Maybe we just got to rethink the whole thing. I
It
mean,
it was W.E.B. Du Bois who said that either America is going to kill ignorance or ignorance is going to kill America. And I'm paraphrasing.
mhm.
And the fact of the matter is, for those people that, because there are some folks in the comments that are like, what do you mean? It's all of us. All of us need to be together. Not this time. Because black
That's what
people,
they want, by the way.
black people have been on the front. The reason why anybody in this country has rights is because of black people and the civil rights movement. That is the only reason why women have rights, why LGBTQ folks have rights, while the folks that have disabilities have rights, is because of black people and the civil rights movement and the blood that was shed and the lives that were lost. So
One of
this
the
time around, it is not for us to be on the front lines of the mess that was created because white folks wanted to stick to their proximity of whiteness and power above all else.
it's and the most interesting thing is when you talk about DEI, who's been the biggest beneficiary of DEI?
White
White
women,
women, you know, and who voted in the majority for Trump. I mean,
white women.
we know we're not gonna get white men, but white women, after having lost autonomy and any number of other things, so um, yeah. So what do we do? What do we do next?
Here's my feeling, and I say this all the time, that my feeling is, what do people do next? You organize locally. That's what you
Hmm.
do. Right? They are gutting your schools so young people will not know their history. If you are a teacher or an educator, maybe start tutoring on the weekends and open up classes that actually talk about critical thinking. If you are a gardener during World War II, you know what people developed? Resistance gardens,
Hmm.
right? So that people could disconnect from their dependence on corporate agriculture, right? And big agro business. Start resistance gardens. Start trading with your neighbors, right? And if you are, teach people how to garden, how to provide for themselves, right? There are opportunities for us to, one, build community in this moment, real community off the screens, right? And actually in real life. To organize on the weekends to say, okay, so on Saturdays, we're calling our senator. We're sending letters. We're dropping things off to the city council, right? Like, these are the ways that we are connecting, because you have to understand that the goal, fascism and autocracy only succeed if we remain in our silos, if we are just desperately hoarding the crumbs that are dropped off rather than recognizing that our power is in the collective. And so I want people to actually activate inside of their local communities, right? And understand that there is work that each and every single one of us can do outside of our front doors. The problem seems enormous, but if you take your part of the problem, and then your neighbor takes their part and the other person takes their part, right? Then we begin to break it down in ways that it becomes digestible. So though that to me is, it is, we go inside community. If they are telling you not to trust your neighbor, you need to connect with your neighbor. If they are telling you to be fearful of the other, you need to introduce yourself to the other, right? We need in this time to be stronger than we have ever been, because the fear and the reality of that fear is so great. But if hate is what they are presenting us as the only thing that we can eat, then we have got to establish a foundation of love, and that love cannot have caveats, right? And it looks like for white folks, again, if you believe and say that you are allies, if you believe and say, right, that you are in solidarity, then you know that they are coming to riddle our bodies first. So you say, you know what, black brother, black sister, you stay home this time, right, because we're going to be out in the streets, right? And that's how we're able to connect and organize, and people take their part on, right, and run with it.
Wow. That's a lot. And it kind of makes me feel good in a way because I feel like some of those things that you mentioned, I'm kind of doing. I wasn't really thinking about it as a strategy, but I don't go to Walmart no more. I just, it's so sad because when I go to Walmart, I'm looking around and there are people in there working and they're older than me.
Yep.
And I'm just like, that's probably not the
A choice.
future that they had in mind for
Mm-hmm.
themselves. And so yeah, I think it's like you said, it's a lot of little things that we can do that we should do. But we're closing in on an hour. I could really do this all day. But I know you got a podcast to run and a YouTube channel to run and all this other stuff. So I really appreciate you giving me this time. And I hope that folks really found some things to take away. I always like to close with this. One of the reasons that I'm on Substack, but especially people like you that we know, most of us know from, legacy media in some
Mm-hmm.
way or other. And now we're seeing people like you and Wajahad and different folks. I think it's telling us that if it may not be over, but the days for legacy media in the way that we know it are kind of done because people, especially now, are seeing it for what it is.
Yes.
And what that means is, like in my case, like I think I told you in our pre-discussion, I canceled YouTube TV because I'm like, all I'm doing is watching news that I don't like anymore, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think what people hopefully will do is choose to support this instead of the other,
Yeah.
because we're keeping it real. I mean, but you're no less credible in this venue than you would be if you were sitting on MSNBC,
A
right?
100%.
So all that to say, folks, I and I'm pretty sure you do everything that I write, all of my content for the most
Free.
part is free,
It's free.
and
You can
fact check
choose
me
to
to
support
death.
if you can choose, you can
you
choose
know
to
but
support if
so
you
it's
want
not
to.
like, I'm not putting up a big paywall saying, hey, even these kind of things, you can choose to make it where only paid subscribers get to see this conversation. But in my view, that doesn't really, that doesn't accomplish a lot,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we've got over 400 people in our audience right now. I don't know. I would venture a guess. Most of them are not my subscribers. I hope that they become subscribers,
Yes.
or one or both of us, right? But I think that people really, hopefully, will choose to support creators like yourself, like me, and others that are out here, not getting a lot. I mean, you know what? It's real easy to get that MAGA money.
Oh, it
you
is.
know,
The joke that my co-host Wajahat that you mentioned for Democracy Ish, and I always say is that if if we were Republicans, we would be
oh,
rich
you'd be sitting
right
on
now.
top of
Like
the.
I would be sitting on top of a heap of coins, like Scrooge, right?
Well,
Um,
I mean,
but
like,
I just, if I
sure,
may,
go
I
ahead.
I
I'm
do
sorry.
I do want to say, another form, right, of how people can be activated is that there are so many folks that are canceling their subscriptions to the New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post, and others. You know, you have $5 a month, $8 a month, whatever it is, consider right? Supporting independent voices, right? Again, I don't believe in paywalls either. All of my content is free, because democracy dies behind a paywall. Right,
Yeah,
like, and if information is the foundation of a healthy democracy, then you have to make it open and free. And so for those, who see my Substack, the damn digest, who support on YouTube, those dollars matter. So if you have the treasure to be able to give, consider that, as a part of
that's part of that
your,
strategy you
as a
just
part
laid
of the
out.
strategy, right? To say, you know what, I'm going to put my dollars with people who are not going to lie to me, to black and brown people who I know are not receiving the coins that their white counterparts and conservative counterparts are getting, right? And so consider, for Marlon, for myself, to subscribe, to become a paid subscriber, to go into these different independent spaces, and do that, because we're going to where the people are.
Whew, man, just so you know, folks, I'll be putting out a recorded version of this for folks who missed
Yay.
it, and you should probably, Danielle, in your drafts, it'll probably pop up too after this. It usually takes 10 or
Oh,
15
okay.
minutes, and so I'll be
Oh, so
posting
I can share
clips.
it again too. Oh,
Absolutely,
yay.
absolutely, you
Okay,
can.
awesome.
So again, thank you so much, and we've got to do this again. Um, and hopefully, Democrats will kind of start getting it together at some point. I'm not holding my breath, but I look forward to seeing you on Substack and reading your content and
Thank you
talking
so
again
much.
soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for my first Substack Live. I appreciate you so much.
Okay, take care.
Bye.